We're going to tie a fly called the peacock agitator. It's off the UMCA website, but I'm just going to make it more of a glass minnow type style pattern. A little bit of red lead-free round wire for weight, some synthetic hair for the tail. I rolled the synthetic hair around my fingers to get a nice taper. This is the taper we're going for. It's hard to add the taper with scissors, so just by teasing out the fibers, rolling them around, get yourself a nice taper. Tie in a couple pieces of Flashabou. We'll use the excess Flashabou to wrap the body. Wrap the body, tie it off. Synthetic hair I'm using has two tones, a deeper and a lighter, darker and a lighter tone. We want the darker tone on top, but we don't want it too dark, so we'll have to blend it. Pull on those fibers till you have a good taper, roll it between your fingers. Reverse tie it in. Repeat the process for the belly fibers. Take everything out before you start gluing. Make sure you're happy with the shape before you start gluing on the eyes. When you're adding the eyes, you can pull back on the top and bottom wing just a little bit to form the shape, but you don't want to pull too taut, or you'll have a misshapen head. There are a few strays. You'll be tempted to pull them out, but right now it's better just to cut them out, trim down to the shape you want. The key to tying this kind of pattern is, number one, the taper. Every section you tie in should have a taper. But number two is the amount of material you're using. Always go lighter, less, than heavier. When the fly is wet, it will slim down, but it will keep some kind of shape. I like the transparency of it. I think that's nice. And then I like the extension of the Flashabou as a lateral line. I think that's nice as well. But the notion of dark on the top, light on the bottom, that's almost every streamer pattern. We're going to tie a Platte River Special, but with largemouth bass in mind. I chose some, I think they call this a badger, or I don't know the specific hackle color, but I chose some feathers with a dark middle line, and then brown. I chose 4 of those. I'm going to add some peacock curl, and then the head feathers are going to be wider, black and brown. We have red flash for the throat, and for the body, instead of spin up your dubbing, we're going to leave the last 2/3 of the hook bare, so we're just going to tie on the first third from the eye. Wrap your dubbing, pick it out. I gave the peacock a slight curl. The tips are almost even, 1 or 2 are longer. Tie in your peacock. As expected, the dubbing goes well beyond the bend of the hook. Tie in your hackle at the same point you tied in your peacock. A generous amount of red flash for the throat. Tie in 2 hackles for the head. Not super thrilled with the turnout. The feathers, the tail is about 1.5 inches too long after further review. But the concept was Platte River Special as a warm water fly. I think it will fish because bass are not too picky, but you gotta shorten up those tail feathers. We're gonna tie a pattern called the Flash Dancer. This is a Dahlberg pattern. We'll use this red tinsel for the belly. Then we have our wing will be ostrich and gold flash. And then we'll do our head with the backside of red bucktail and chartreuse bucktail. The red will be on the bottom. Tie in your red tinsel for the belly, The original Flash Dancer pattern had a chenille body, but we're going to eliminate that. So we're just going to do tail, wing, and head, no body wrap. On the main stem of the ostrich plume, the tips are a little blunt, so we want to go up toward the tip of the ostrich plume, and you can see those tips are nice and sharp. That's what we want. Behind the red flash, tie in the ostrich. Behind the ostrich, tie in your gold flash. Stack tie in a bunch of bucktail. The original pattern has a deer hair head with a shorter deer hair collar, but we're going to make the collar longer so it blends into the body of the fly. And then on the underside, we'll tie in our red bucktail. One more clump of green. Don't worry about the tips because they'll be trimmed. Pack the head and whip finish. With the razor blade, start shaping the head. It's got the gold wing that the original Flash Dancer has, deer hair head. I accentuated the head a bit, got rid of that underbody. For me, this is going to be a early summer pattern for largemouth bass. After the spawn, when they're super aggressive, I think the colors lend to that. Using the bucktail instead of belly hair makes it a little less buoyant, but still there's no weight on this pattern, so throw it with a floating line and fish it 6 inches under the water. You'll see all the strikes will still be very visible. So yeah, I like this one a lot. Here's one I tied in a much smaller size, more neutral colors. I think this type of fly you could fish just about anywhere for any species. We're going to tie a streamer pattern that resembles a juvenile sunfish or panfish. We're going to just use synthetic hair, and then we have a short shank, a little wider gap hook, so we'll tie it on that. We'll add a little bit of flash and maybe a bit of dubbing for the head. That's the general color we're going for. Tie in your tail section. Fold the forward line material back, put a small bump of thread so it integrates with the tail. Repeat that step one more time. A few barred pieces of crystal flash. Take the same material you were using for the tail, but cut it in half so there's shorter sections. We're going to start building up the head. One clump on the top, one clump on the bottom. Repeat the step again. Tie one clump in on the top, one clump in on the bottom. One last time, a clump in on the top, clump in on the bottom. I'll finish off the head of the fly with a little bit of lavender, sparkly dubbing, some darker green, and some fox fur. Dubbing for the top, dubbing for the bottom. Pick everything out. The more time you spend on this, the better the result will be. When the fly is out of the vise and picked out, start trimming with your scissors. It's going to take time. You might have to pick it out again, but don't. You want to cut hairs, 2, 3 at a time, not a bunch of fibers in your hand at once, making clean cuts. So this is the skill for this type of fly. Occasionally preen everything back and see what kind of shape the fly is taking. It doesn't always need to be cut, so you can pull material out too. A few more cuts here and there, but in general, I'm satisfied with the shape. You can see it's got a very slim front profile, but a taller side profile. Get the fly back in the vise. Time to add some eyes. Eye placement for this pattern is important. Most times you want it close to the eye of the hook, but start adding a couple drops of super glue a little bit further back. It'll help help maintain the integrity of the head. You can start decorating with a permanent marker to add other features. When doing your marker work, you don't want the ink to bleed too much, so just tap, 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 and stroke, stroke, and take your time. Dabble. You could spend days sitting and trimming all the strays. At some point, you just gotta let it go. But I like the color. The gray fox with the lavender on the head makes it pop. When tying with synthetics, there is a lot of waste. It's messy, but this style's quite common. I think if you were using like EP fibers, they call it a EP style fly. This one I forgot to mention. I think this one is called a bush pig, but the bush pigs that I saw didn't have any natural. Obviously, we added some natural material, the fur dubbing. The other point that I would make is if you're using thinner synthetic hair, you want to use a thinner thread, and go with smaller, sparser bunches, and you can do that with if you're using a thinner thread. If you're using thicker material, use a thicker thread. But I think it's a style everyone should try. It's messy, but you can tie some really cool color combinations and different types of streamers. So give it a try. We're going to tie a deceiver pattern. We're going to try to do olive over white, throw in some flashabou, and then use peacock herl for the back, and maybe some synthetic hair for a lateral line. For the tail section, I'm going to use the longest strands of bucktail, but the sparsest clump, and then I'm not going to start tying all the way at the end of the shank of the hook. That's just my preference. I tied in 2 strands of flashabou. Here's a sparse clump of white. I measured it slightly shorter than the tail. I tied it in on top, and I'm going to work it down so it's at the bottom of the hook. I'm just using 2 loose securing wraps, and then I'll work the bucktail down and add a bunch of olive bucktail on top. I added 2 more strands of flashabou. You can start to see the color differentiation with the olive and the white. I repeated the steps, olive over white, but instead of flashabou, I added some synthetic hair on the sides. That'll be our lateral line. So far, it's been 3 sections of bucktail. Now it's time to start thinking about the head. I'm gonna add a fairly liberal bunch of peacock. I ran the peacock over the edge of my scissors ever so slightly, not the sharp edge, but the outside frame, metal frame, and we want it to have a little curl. One last tie-in of olive over white. I'm going to finish the head with a dubbing blend. I just took a clump of dubbing and then tied it in. I didn't create a rope or a brush, and then I'll pick that out. The end is looking a little scraggly, so you gotta clean that up. We're gonna add some eyes. We're gonna use super glue to secure the eye, so before we do that, we're gonna want to just make sure everything is lying flat, and the super glue will kind of act like a hair gel to bind everything and start the shape. I had a couple of drops of super glue, and then I gently placed the eye on top and start securing it down. I don't smush it down. The super glue almost always has a kind of reaction with the synthetic and the dubbing. Sometimes it even starts to smoke. But if you time it well and place the eye at the right time, it'll secure it nicely while still keeping the volume of the head. You can see the longest fibers in this are a few pieces of the synthetic hair, a few pieces of the flash, and then we have the bucktail and the peacock curl, and the rest of the fly. The point being, taper is extremely important when you're tying streamers. It's hard to incorporate peacock curl into the streamer and have it look good. It took me a couple tries, but curling it with the scissors is definitely the way to go. And then when you're tying with bucktail, the fly doesn't need to be just one solid color, all white, all olive. You can incorporate different shades and color patterns, and I find it far more pleasant to fish with when I know that there's a little differentiation, maybe more natural looking as well. Bucktail deceiver, definitely, if you're a streamer fisherman, warm water fisherman, saltwater fisherman, you're gonna have to tie up this pattern.